I think I just have to come out and admit that I was wrong. I've been pretty vocal about my hate for Pioneer, especially for a format that Wizards of the Coast just refuses to support. But when it comes to accessibility, Pioneer is apparently unmatched. One thing that I've been loudly ignoring is actually the prices of Pioneer. Top tier competitive decks in the format are actually much cheaper, if not half the cost of standard and modern decks. And I've been shouting the need for accessibility in Magic, shouting the praises of Pauper for being accessible in that aspect, and talking about how you can build legacy decks without reserve list cards. So why not spend some time today talking about the situation with Pioneer, its deck prices, and why it actually might be a great time to get into the format. So Saffron Olive tweets here, as weird as it sounds, Pioneer is actually way cheaper than Standard currently, which seems like a pretty clear sign that Standard is way too expensive at the moment, which honestly is like a whole separate discussion. I just don't want this to devolve into like a general Standard conversation, because I think like Cal's tweet like summarizes it pretty well. It's crazy looking at this and seeing everyone comment and insisting that it's mana, but the problem is that Standard is expensive right now for many different staples being highly, super priced here. You're talking about uncommons that are like $15 a pop, answers and sideboard options that are also expensive. So, $200 VV playsets, 250 Cauldron playsets, like, oh my lord, like I bought into something like Legacy so late when it comes to this. I should have bought it a couple months ago, but I was waiting on some store credit to come in because, oh lord, I had the opportunity to buy Cauldrons at like 30 a piece, and now I had to buy them at like 80 a piece, 70, 80 a piece for my red black painter deck. And it's really painful to see Standard kind of pop it up. And I think we probably will see the banning of either VV and or something like Agatha Soul Cauldron. So something will happen down the line, but really what I want to focus on is the prices. So when it comes to something like the Standard metagame, right? If you took at the general prices of the deck. So the aggro decks are actually relatively cheap. They are somewhere in the range of $150 to $250, right? So again, still relatively expensive for a deck. You can obviously buy a really cheap commander deck for something like that. You can buy a pre-con, upgrade it a little bit, yada, yada. You can do all that. But when it comes to the top of the metagame, Izzet Cauldron is somewhere in the range of $750 to $800. Dimir mid-range is approximately $350 to $400. Esper Self Bounce is $500. Izzet Prowess largely takes a lot of the expensive cards from Izzet Cauldron, just ports it over. So of course it's going to be $600 to $700. Azorius Control, even out of itself, this is standard deck that I'm playing currently because I had a lot of the pieces when it came to playing Omniscience before the bans. So I ported over into Azorius Control, and thankfully I still have those cards, but I'm playing them on Arena. I'm not buying a $400 control deck to play Standard in paper. Absolutely freaking not. So a lot of the top tier kind of decks in the Standard environment are relatively expensive. They're actually really high costed. I would expect Standard to be somewhere around these price ranges where, so yeah, $200, 100 something, maybe at the top end you have like a $300, $400 deck that's like 5-color domain or something like that, because you need all the best cards in each color. Like that's like, okay, semi-reasonable. Well, cards should be cheaper, but you can see why that deck specifically would be expensive. But when a 2-color deck is just really expensive because the price of certain cards, like if we kind of click in here, VV $200 US. If you look at a whole Cauldron playset, $250 right here. That means out of this whole $750 price tag, right? $450 of that price tag, $450 is just 8 cards. The rest of them sum up into about $300. Absolutely insane. Like Prof's Eidetic Memory, actually really popular card to play. Into the Flood Maw, kind of highlighting that $10 to $15 range I was talking about, where you have stock ups, and Into the Flood Maw having uncommons be that pricey. Mana bases are obviously like pretty expensive to some degree as well, but regardless, this deck specifically is being kind of boosted up by the price of Quantum Riddler, very popular modern card right now. But regardless, there's a lot of expensive cards in the Standard deck. But when you compare this to even the modern format, a lot of the prices are like similar. Like you can play modern Ruby Storm top tier competitive deck for $500. You could play Belcher, which is a top tier combo deck, for $500. Even Affinity, the majority of the cost in this is 4 Mox Opals. The rest, like if you click into Affinity right now, the majority of this is like the 4 Mox Opals, which is like $700. This is a $1,200 list in and of itself. Like That's the majority of the cost alongside Urza Saga. 700 plus that, it's like a couple of cards that end up being the whole cost when it comes to some of these decks, whereas the other ones are kind of relatively spread out. But regardless, you saw some decks at like 700, some at 800, but some of them can be as low as 500 to 600 to play an Eternal format, or close to Eternal format. Modern is not technically an Eternal format, but regardless, top tier decks in other formats in comparison to Standard, where cards rotate out and you will see more active churn in cards. How are these cards so expensive for a temporary investment? And yes, you could argue some of these cards are playable in other formats, something like Agatha Soul Cauldron, but they are playable in completely different shells. Again, when you think about Legacy, it is a red-black painter shell, which is primarily mono red, using completely different cards outside of the Soul Cauldron. Even in Modern, you're using Agatha Soul Cauldron in something like Yawgmoth mid-range or Yawgmoth combo. Not even a top tier deck right now. Very popular deck, very good deck in many ways, but a completely different mana base. So you aren't able to port over some of these cards that are necessarily that expensive, that 1-for-1. VV combo is technically a thing in Modern, but the removal is very efficient in the format. So when it comes to VV, you don't necessarily want to be putting it under Cauldron, because that is just a recipe to getting blown out. You will probably have your graveyard answered really easily. You will have your Agatha Soul Cauldron answered and kind of dealt with really easily as well. Modern is just a more efficient format in terms of the threats that it wants to put out. So when it comes to decks like this, I realized like I might actually have been kind of keeping like the MTG open. Oh no, I have the tabletop prices. Okay, but regardless, a lot of these decks do have comparable costs to Standard deck. Like, is it prowess? You can grind 5-0s and 4-1s in Magic Online leagues with Is It Prowess for 400 bucks, less than the, like almost half the price of Is It Cauldron when it comes to Standard play. But when it goes to Pioneer play, top deck mono red aggro, Pioneer has its own problems, a quarter of the metagame, sometimes even a third of the metagame just being mono red. Only 150 bucks. It is largely just the banned Standard cards, which has kind of dropped it in price, especially. A lot of the Standard mono red deck that was just banned out of the format or just kind of severely weakened is just 1-for-1 the mono red deck in Pioneer, which might say something about the power or lack of power in the format. But Rakdos mid-range, Azorius control, Rakdos mid-range, having, being $600, control being about 400, 350 to 400, comparable to control in Standard. Is it Phoenix, one of the more popular decks in the format that's been around for a while, close to 300. Orzhov Greasefang, which is like a reanimation mid-range aggro plan through like vehicles, which is really unique. Mono black mid-range, mono black control deck. Hidden Strings, which is pure combo, which is like relatively cheap at like something like $300. Even Selesnya Angels, shout out to my friend Jack, Blitz MTG, who plays Selesnya Angels in something like Pioneer. Simic Scapeshift, this is my favorite deck. Simic Scapeshift is $600 because the price of Scapeshift is absolutely insane. I wanted to buy this deck in paper. Like, unironically, I was like, yo, I actually really like this deck. I want to see how much it is. Screw that. Scapeshift is like $70 to $80 a copy. Screw that. Reprint Scapeshift when? Again, $700 deck. Almost $300 of that cost is just for cards. This is kind of highlights the primary reprint problem that I've been talking about in many other formats, but I don't really want to rehash it here. Go watch those videos if you want to kind of see my thoughts on how we can reprint and my thoughts on the reprint problem in general that Wizards of the Coast refuses to address and or fix. They just kind of go about power creeping cards in terms of actually, instead of actually reprinting older cards. So when it comes to pure accessibility, you could compare this to something like Pauper. Top tier play, available at Eternal Weekends as well. Lots of active play when it comes to MTGO. More like faster queues on MTGO than in Pioneer. Pioneer has that additional capability of being on Magic Arena, but that is a whole different economy. You can get so many more games, so much more variety when it comes to the Pauper format for decks that are so cheap. Like when it comes to tabletop play, $50 to $100 gets you top tier Pauper play. When it comes to MTGO, sometimes even cheaper, sometimes more expensive actually, because of some of the staples that exist in the deck. So it really does vary. MTGO does have its own economy, but really going to show you that there are formats out there that are really accessible and we are ignoring some of them. But the thing that highlights Pioneer the most is, I think Brian's kind of tweet here, Bosch and Roll here. What if Pioneer was the current RCQ format instead of Standard? What if it received any support at all? We've been hearing, Rejuvenate Standard Standard for 3 years now. That's synonymous with create demand. Looks like it's finally working. So there is demand in Standard. People are playing Standard. People are excited for Standard. Tournaments are happening in Standard. A lot of events around the format. So things are going to have more eyes on them. People are going to be playing them. People are going to be grinding the competitive circuit. Now, if Pioneer, by that argument, had an RCQ format, I kind of retweeted this, it would also be that popular as well. Anyone with an eye toward long-term collection management, this is probably a good time to get into Pioneer staples while barely anyone cares about them. It will come a day, one day, maybe think about grabbing your Grease Fangs and your Parhelions or whatever you like for less than $1, and which I think is a very valuable thing. Like, there's been a lot of public outcry about the lack of support for Pioneer. If Wizards of the Coast wants to change this, especially because they pushed Standard doubly so this year with Foundations, and with the whole Universes Beyond push with Standard legal sets, it is to be said that they will probably try and mitigate some of this and fix some of this by pushing Pioneer in a big way next year. We will probably be getting a Pioneer RCQ season next year. So if you wanted to get into Pioneer now, if there's a deck that really interests you, it is still relatively cheap to get into Pioneer right now, and it is a good time to get in now. Will certain decks be changed? Yes. When it comes to the November ban and restriction announcement coming later this year, there will be some changes to the format from there. They do want to rejuvenate the Pioneer format. If they want to inject interest into it, they want to create a fresh format, and they want to show through the competitive environment by introducing an RCQ season that they are interested, they are watching, they want people to be playing the format. So Pioneer is really accessible right now. In summary, it is a great time to be getting in, and it actually does have deep competitive gameplay. It just can be really redundant with the fact that the metagame is kind of largely held back by if I kind of pop out of here, if I don't know, where is it? Where's my button? If I kind of pop out of here, when it comes to the Pioneer metagame, if I'll actually go back, it is largely being taken up by like 1 to 2 decks. So right now it is a really tough time to play it, but I think it's actually, if you have the wild card for it, like really fun to play on the arena ladder, especially when it comes to same escape shift. A lot of people actually aren't playing that deck on the arena ladder, and it's actually really easy to play once you get the combo going. It is definitely one of the top decks in the format. A lot of people just aren't playing it. There's a lot of innovation to be had in here. And honestly, as much as I talk crap about Pioneer, I still think it's a dumb format. I still think it's undersupported, and Wizards of the Coast doesn't want to help it, but I can't ignore the fact that the format is highly accessible. There is a lot of variety and uniqueness in its gameplay in some of the decks. Like, some of these decks just don't exist outside of this. Like, you can create 1-for-1 analogs in Is It Phoenix, Azorius Control, mono red aggro, Sim Escape Shift, even like it's like has similar vibes to like Amulet Titan and Modern. But some decks like Orzhov Greasefang, Hidden Strings, like stuff like that, like you don't have that in any other format. So it has some of the most unique parts of Magic existing in the format. Like the fact that Vehicles is technically a top tier deck in Pioneer, the uniqueness that exists in this format is something that cannot be ignored. So when it comes to Pioneer play, I think that this is definitely a format to get excited about, definitely one that is highly accessible, and as Bosch and Rose said, it is a great time to pop in and purchase some staples. So let me know what you think about the Pioneer format. Let me know how you're feeling about it in general. I'm definitely like on a bit of a high about it recently. I've been posting a little bit more gameplay specifically about one deck, but regardless, I'm excited to see where the format goes. I'll be playing it for the next couple of months. As long as Loomer combo is there, I'll be jamming it on the arena ladder, trying to hit Mythic. So if y'all want to see more gameplay of that, let me know in the comment section down below. But for now, Pioneer honestly might just be on the come up.